Welcome to Beyond the Game. My name is Gregan, and today I'm chatting with Odee, Team Dignitas founder and one of the most successful player managers in esports.
We didn't call it esports back then. Like, I started in 1999 and it was just like video games for money. That was cool. So esports didn't even kick in, and then we went through the big S, like no big S, now we're not allowed a big S, and now it's a big E.
I want to get it out of the way. Hit me with some stats on player management. How many people you work with?
So it's probably just over 1,500 players, and I would say staff as well. Probably about just over 1,500.
Did you think of it as an org back then, or was it more like a sort of gaming community of the modern day?
It was really a collection of players that wanted to play Battlefield. That's what Dignitas was. I went through 3 years of Quake 3 trying to make stuff happen. I even created the first European Championship. Nothing really happened exciting, but then the demo for Battlefield 1942 came out, and it was literally, you can get in a ship, you can fly a plane, you're infantry, you got in a tank. It was just like so cool. And I just decided I'm going to be the best in the world at this game.
Make sure to follow for future episodes, and let us know who you want to hear from next. I hope you enjoy this conversation as we get to know Odee beyond the game. Odee, welcome. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no worries.
I was excited about this one because I feel like everyone listening, and myself in particular, will learn a lot from you, because you've been through the whole story of esports from right at the start, and the big thing you started with was Dignitas, which 2003 was it you founded it?
Yeah, back then. But there was more before that.
There was more before that. Talk us through the start of esports for you. I guess when was the first time you coined the term esports around the things you were doing?
To be perfectly honest, I haven't got a clue. I don't know where it came from. No one really knows where it came from. Like the best suggestion that I had was it was the Electronic Sports World Cup, and it kind of came from there, which would make sense. I don't know. We didn't call it esports back then. Like, I started in 1999, and it was just like video games for money. That was cool.
Mm-hmm.
So esports didn't even kick in, and then we went through the big S, like no big S, now we're not allowed a big S, and now it's a big E. Yeah, couldn't tell you. No idea.
You started with Quake, was it?
Actually, Duke Nukem, which is probably the most non-PC game you can have right now. But it was a great game. It was I'm not going to use that word, but I was hooked on playing first-person shooters, because when I grew up playing against algorithms, basically, which is the computer like having set rhythms to play, and you played against that. When I first went online and started playing against real people on a server, these people were moving however the hell they wanted. So when I started playing first-person shooters on a peer-to-peer, one-to-one with my mate, who was 3 miles away, it was just mind-blowing. It was just so cool. So Duke Nukem, that was the first tournament I won in 1999, and I won 20 quid, and I was well happy.
And then Dignitas was where you started to almost get a name for yourself with the players you were managing and the support you were giving. And in my mind, you're the player manager. Whenever I think of someone, it's like, who's worked with players the most, who's experienced the most players. I want to get it out of the way. Hit me with some stats on player management. How many people you work with? So
it's probably just over 1,500 players. And I would say staff as well. Probably about just over 1,500.
1,500. And then most of those would have been at Dignitas.
Yep.
The 15 odd years you were there.
Yep.
And then since then you were with Royal Ravens as well.
Yeah, Royal Ravens and Koi. Well, Rogue and Royal Ravens, and then Koi and Royal Ravens. So it's been an interesting. Actually, this December is my 25th year in esports.
So whenever we see those 10 plus years of experience, there's not many people out there who can say they've got that. But
yeah, when you got 3 decades, then I might know you. It's gone really quick though. I must like, time flies. It really does. So Duke Nukem 99, and then Quake quickly after that, Quake 3, which was just amazing. The first server I jumped on there. Playing Counter-Strike, CTF, Counter-Strike, Capture the Flag. It was just like rockets flying all over the place. It was just so cool. And then I just wanted to play for a really good team, and got into a really good team in Quake. Played for the UK national team in Quake, but there wasn't really any money in it. And to be perfectly honest, we didn't play for the money. I didn't play for the money. I just played I wanted to win. So I got into esports because I got injured playing football. And that's how I started playing.
You were telling me before the podcast you played football, American football.
Yep.
And your number was 33.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
And this episode is episode 33, so I feel there's a bit of fate
Yeah, it's
there.
a bit weird. So I always believe everything's set out for you. Like, there's too much coincidence in my life for some weird stuff to not be happening. So, but yeah, 33 was my number.
I wonder if we can get a picture of that of you in your jersey or a tweet about it somewhere.
Yeah, and it's in colour as well. So yeah.
In colour. I mean, you're going to be, when we go into our top 5 games, you're going to be one of the people who's got experience with games that most of the listeners, and myself included, have probably never heard of. I'm interested because we had an older guest recently, Robbie, and one of his games was Horace skiing game.
Horace. Yeah.
Do you remember
that? Spectrum.
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna have some fun with that. So let's go to the starting of Dignitas. You mentioned about the sort of lack of money and the fact that you're doing it for the love of the game. I'm assuming around when you started Dignitas, that would have been some of the earlier orgs that were looking to sort of support around players. Did you think of it as an org back then, or was it more like a sort of gaming community of the modern day?
It was really a collection of players that wanted to play Battlefield. That's what Dignitas was. So basically, I went through 3 years of Quake 3 trying to make stuff happen. I even created the first European Championship, and we had teams from Iceland, Turkey playing on 300 pings. Nothing really happened exciting, but then the demo for Battlefield 1942 came out, and it was literally, you can get in a ship, you can fly a plane, you're infantry, you got in a tank. It was just like so cool. And I just decided I'm going to be the best in the world at this game. So I nicked a couple of Quake players from my old team, and we started a team. We realised we weren't good enough, so I kept them 2 guys with me, and we just started going to the top 2 teams and saying, look, we're good, like, can we join? Took about 3 months to get into this team called LCD, and Demon, the caster, was in that team, is my teammate. We got in, and then because Battlefield was like 14 versus 14, sometimes 12v12, 10v10, we didn't have enough players all the time because there was games all the time. And we didn't do this like just to make money. We did it because it was just fun. Like, it was just, I had a job, just had my first child, just got married, so I was doing it for fun. So basically we didn't have enough players, so one day we went to the second best team, because we were the best team, of course. And we said, do you want to merge? It's a team called Companix, mainly Swedish players. Our team was me, a load of Germans, and a Danish guy. So we merged. So that night, I remember going on and saying, look, let's pick a Latin name, a cool Latin name with cool meaning. So we spent 3 hours coming up with all sorts of Latin names, and eventually someone said Dignitas. And it means merit, prestige, dignity, and worth. And I was like, that's it, that one. But we got to call it Team Dignitas, because Dignitas on its own is a bit weird. And we didn't know there was a Swiss suicide clinic at the time. Nobody told us. We didn't know for like 3 years until we started getting interviews. It's like, why are you named after a suicide? We're not. It's a Latin word. And that's it. We became the best team in the world. What I set out to do happened. We went unbeaten for, I think it was something like 19 months, 140 odd official matches. No one beat us. Lost half the practices, but no one beat us. And again, UK national team for Battlefield. Played with Joe Miller. He was in the UK national team with Demon as well. And it was great. But what we did, and we didn't set out to be an org, because it didn't really exist then. We wanted to add Counter-Strike, but we were too late. We wanted to add Brood War, but we were too late, and the money was just too much to get those teams. So we went to the other so-called smaller games, so like Enemy Territory and Call of Duty, and we said to those teams, look, come to us. We're going to be Dignitas, and like, if there's any lands, I'll pay, because it was my credit card basically paying for everything at the beginning. And that's how Dignitas grew. So we had a massive fan base for the so-called smaller games, and we grew under the radar of the other big teams.
I mean, the first question I got asked about Dignitas as an organisation, you came up with a name like that. How did you come up with, your first jersey design, your first brand, like Digi? Where did that come from?
So that was quite funny. So when we were having success in tournaments, we started going to LANs in Germany, flying over there with a 3-foot high tower case to win a tower case. That was the prizes. Like, that's literally was the prize. We went to one in Stuttgart, slept in a car park, multi-story car park, in a Renault Megane. I remember that. Won this tournament, and then we got an email from 8-Bit Computers in Taiwan, and they said that they're going to be at CeBIT this year. Come and meet us because we're interested in sponsoring you. So I sent one of our guys. We did the marketing there. I didn't go. And they said, basically, we want to give you $10,000 to sponsor you and put a logo on your shirt. And we obviously said, we don't have a shirt. So they said, don't worry, we'll do you one. So the original Dignitas shirt was, it was like, I'll give you a picture of it so you can show it at this point. It's not what, it was kind of like an orangey, like Dignitas head. So what we'd done, we'd gone to a graphic designer and paid €200, and we just said to him, look, we want a unisex like logo, which is like a character. That's it. That's all we said, and he came up with Digi.
And that was it.
That's it. So,
and he said it was orange at the time, but the kind of yellow and black.
We wanted it in so you can make it like if you had a silhouette of it, it could be any color. So a pink one, black one, like whatever color. So the first one turned out kind of orange on the 8-Bit shirt. But we always wanted black and yellow. Well, that's a lie. I always wanted black and yellow because of this T-shirt.
You're wearing it right now, Nirvana.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's black and yellow, because of Nirvana.
Well, black and yellow has been quite a common colour scheme in esports. It's weird how a lot of people have kind of gone for that yellow design. Yeah, well, we did think about it. It wasn't just because of Nirvana. It's like, okay, we're going to LANs, we're going to sweat a lot, so you need a black T-shirt. We don't want to be bright red. We don't want a bit of this and that. So we went for this. And it was good. And Dignitas has evolved a lot. I mean, now it's completely different to where you started. Talk me through the sort of evolution of Dignitas, because there was a point as well where it sort of paused as well, if I'm not mistaken. Sort of, there wasn't as much activity, and then you got a sort of revitalization where it all started kicking off again. So talk through the journey of Dignitas.
Okay, so 2003, 4, 5, it was really like Battlefield, enemy territory, Call of Duty, winning everything, literally everything, so it was great. 2005, we picked up our first sponsor, big sponsor, Creative, and that was like, it was more than 8-Bit, and then that's when my brain started kicking in, like if we actually get some more money in, I could like do this full time and like concentrate on it because I'm bored of my real job. And a couple of months later, we met at iSeries at Newbury, Scan Computers basically, and had a good chat with them. Got a call 2 weeks later, and they said, we want to sponsor you, but we're bringing XFX, Corsair. There's one other, I forgot it. And we had 4 more sponsors in 2 months, and it was literally what the hell. And then a couple of months later, Intel said, okay, we want to sponsor you too. And that was it, trigger for me to leave my job. Came home from work, I said to my wife that I've just left work, we just signed Intel, and she was like, okay, whatever. And that's it. That's when it went professional. So I've been full-time in esports since 2006.
So 2006, we're starting to see esports growing, it's professionalizing a bit, but there's still
I wouldn't say professionalizing. It was very... there was money coming into it, but not enough money to actually have proper salaries. There were some salaries kicking around. There were things that popped up like Meet Your Makers. They popped up around that time where they came in with like, I think it was €2 million investment. And then some players got like silly salaries. Like literally one player I know was on 10 grand a month. It's just unsustainable at that point. I knew that in my head. We weren't paying any salaries. We were just paying all of the travel everywhere, like hotels, food, all of that. And like eventually, like coming near 2010, our flight bill was like almost £500,000. But we still weren't really paying any salaries at that point. So 2007, that was an interesting time because that's when Championship Gaming came along. Basically, up until that point, everybody had been chasing mainstream media and television, thinking that once it gets on there, it's going to be it, and we're all going to be rich and famous. I was of that opinion as well, I must admit. And 2007, I got headhunted to be a manager for the Birmingham Salvo team in that league, and they wanted me to like leave Dignitas, and I said no. I said I'll step sideways and backwards, but I'm not leaving it. Turned out to be a really good decision because that's when the recession hit the next year, and I was being paid silly money at the time to run the Salvo team of 10 players. We still had like 60 odd players in Dig. So I was funding all of the Dignitas with the Sky money, basically. 2008, I went on to win the Championship Gaming Series with Salvo, and then the league died and everybody was out of a job. But luckily, I was able to step back into Dig. Still quite a few players from the Championship Gaming Series League, and then got bigger from there for us. And that's when, like, it's just before Twitch came along, which is like 2010, 2011, and that's when everything changed.
So talk to me a bit about the big change for esports when you started to look at it and go, right, this is a big industry now. Because you've mentioned all this time, it's sort of, there was big extensions where people were trying to force it to be bigger than it was, and then they'd disappear, and then it would kind of go back to, oh yeah, this is just a bit of fun. Let's go travel to a few LANs and travel to events with prize money. And at what point did it start to be, loads of people getting jobs? These events were being run much more professionally. There was big production, let's be honest, the production now in a lot of esports events is TV level production. Mm-hmm. When did that all start to happen, do you think?
100% 2010 when Twitch came along. Twitch changed everything. The eyeballs just, I've said this on many interviews, that went through the roof because that's what happened. Like, so whatever tournament, whatever LAN you were at, there was a Twitch stream. So people were watching. That meant that for anybody investing money into esports, they had more numbers than they'd ever had before. So like when I played in a big tournament in like 2004-05, we had like 100 people watching us. And then jump to 2011, you'd get like 100,000, and it just grew and grew and grew. But then that's when games like League of Legends came along, StarCraft 2. We waited a long time for StarCraft 2. We had a plan of jumping straight into that because, as I said, we missed Brood War. Picked up the number one player on the list that we had, Select. And yeah, it just got even bigger. The sponsorships got more and more. And yeah, we were going all around the world to like, I don't know, 20 to 30 tournaments every month. So it was brilliant. It was good fun.
Oh, amazing. I mean, when I look at esports now, there's one thing that I think is concerning is the lack of just people doing it for the love of gaming.
Yeah.
I think the story you've described, you can sort of feel the love of gaming coming through. And there's definitely a point, it sounds like, where it started to become a little bit more businessy in the sort of 2010 to 2020, sort of as the years went on, start to be like, oh, how can we make money out of this? How can we convert this into a return on investment? Is that something you noticed from the org side that started to be a problem, or was it always there, just it got bigger and bigger?
I think love of esports at the beginning for almost everybody in it, 100%. And there's people from the beginning like me and before me as well that they're running esports now. But there's sustainability. That's the biggest word in esports for the last 20 years. Like, it has to be sustainable. I've seen so many bad ideas, bad decisions by so many people, and I've made some myself, where it's just doesn't make it sustainable. Once esports is fully sustainable, when the ecosystem is fully sustainable from grassroots through to like pro and beyond pro for pros that retire and go on to do whatever they are, that's where I want to get to. How long that will take, I don't know. Hopefully I get to see it. I'm not that old yet. I don't know. It's you got to have a plan. Like, the plan when we started Dig was to win tournaments. That was the plan. Simple as that. And then that started creating money. Then once you get money, you've got to have a plan on like, how do you keep that money going? What happens if your income drops? How do you like make that up? So we started planning and like having ideas and coming up, doing all sorts of things that people just hadn't done before. So we used to run tournaments, and we used to get sponsors that weren't our sponsors to sponsor those tournaments, and that paid off. But I always knew that I needed literally a leg up to get to the next level, to go to the sport level. And that's when we got to start talking to the Philadelphia 76ers, because in my head that's the next level I needed, that level that already exists where they have an ecosystem which goes round and round and round, from like basketball court to like the end product, and then coaches, and then also like all of the commercial stuff that goes with it. That's what I feel, and I still feel that's needed in a lot of esports today.
I mean, sports clubs have been the biggest boost for a lot of esports orgs in terms of money, in terms of support and advice and all that kind of thing. Did you feel that when you brought the Philadelphia, was it 76ers?
Yep.
When you brought them in, did you feel that effect of the support in terms of the knowledge and things, or was it more just a monetary gain?
Well, okay, so I'm not gonna lie, personally, yeah, monetary gain for me. Yeah, I've done it for years, and like, okay, I get a payoff. But the support, you could see it instantly. Like when you get to see the departments and like everything they were doing, it's pretty mind blowing when you haven't seen or had access to that kind of like understanding of how the sports world works. I think still we're at the infancy. Still, like I'm 25 years in, we're still at the infancy of this thing. Really, we are. So the sustainability model still is yet to appear. In my head, there's only one answer to it, which people might not like. And seriously, people have got to pay to watch esports. That's it. You watch everything else you do pretty much in the real world. You have to pay for, even like Sky subscription or bloody Netflix or like going to see a football match. You got to pay for it. Once that becomes normal, then the business model starts really working. How you do that though, good luck to whoever gets that going, because it's going to be hard to start with. But once it gets going and actually kicks in, then sky's the limit.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I've noticed. I work in the Pokemon trading card game world, and they've built up a model where people pay to play. You know, people pay for entries, people pay to travel to events. There's, you know, very few people are actually sponsored and supported to go to the events. And then in terms of the stream, you know, it's quite a small stream compared to esports, and the prize money's a bit smaller. And now obviously they all want the esports level of growth there. But when you've got something where people are willing to pay, thousands of people are willing to pay to travel to a city outside of your country, pay for a ticket and turn up and, you know, provide their own decks and everything like that. That's where I've noticed you wouldn't see that in esports. You wouldn't see many people pay for an entry fee for a tournament. You know, think of how many of these young teams at Insomnia are begging orgs to pay for them to go along. It seems like a lack of willingness from the esports community to pay for the things that they enjoy doing.
Although it does exist. So if you look at things like the international, like the crowdfunding for the last few years, or whenever that began, like it's millions and millions of dollars that has kept Dota alive for so long. This could happen in every single esport. I'm not saying that I want everybody to pay for everything that's going on, but there has to be, somebody's got to pay for it, whatever it is. And if people want like success and longevity in careers in esports, I mean, I'm not like Rocket League where the lifespan of a player is like, if you get to like 5 years, that's like you're an old age pensioner. You need 15-year careers. Like when I was a player, I retired at 36, and that wasn't because I was just like a superhuman. It's because I had a job. I already had money. Like I was earning money and I was good at what I did. And I only retired because I was just too busy doing emails in the middle of practice to our sponsors. That's a true story. In a European Championship final, I didn't know what to do because I didn't listen in practice. Luckily, I got it right and we won.
There's different times back then. You see that similar kind of thing in fighting games as well, as people are a lot older there because they have normal jobs. They balance it around that kind of thing, and they love and they're passionate about the game. And that was actually something we had Damascus on here, who's a fighting game commentator, and he said something which completely changed my outlook on esports. He said esports has become soulless. In a lot of places it has become soulless, and I feel like you have pockets of it within each esport where there's a very soulful community. So in Rocket League, the French community, they've got that amazing close-knit community with the Rocket Baguettes, you know, the central stream. All of the streamers are very connected with the players, and they do in-person events. You know, in Paris Games Week, there's always events going on. So there's a huge amount of soul in our French community of Rocket League, and consequently, they are our strongest players, and they do very well. And I feel like what you're seeing now in League of Legends with the franchise, it's lost a bit of its soul. It's very like drained of that passion that we saw when it first came out, and it's now about how much money is the next player being sold for and so on. Do you feel like that's the case in esports? It's lost a bit of its soul?
I'm not so sure of that. I think everybody that's involved in whatever game they're playing, they're passionate. It's purely how the business model works, and I think right now, because of the economic climate we are in right now, and it's still like this in 2008, 2009, way worse than where we are now. I just think there needs to be some kind of like reset, kickstart, whatever word you want to use to describe how it gets going. Somebody's got to make some tough decisions to start creating some money to pay for all of this. And I'll go on about that for hours. I sound like my dad, but I can't think of any other way. You don't get stuff for free. It's simple as that.
Do you think it's going to come from the orgs first before it comes from the tournament organisers, where orgs have subscription services to get behind the scenes content and things like that?
No. What I'd hope is that it's a complete life cycle from developer to orgs to sponsors to tournaments the whole way around, and it goes around and it works for everybody. There's enough space for everybody in this, and it's only going to get bigger. To see what it is like now. So as I've just left my last team last month, the last 3 weeks of me, I described it to my wife. I've for the last 6 years I've been like a blinkered horse, where I've just been looking at esports, top level esports, and now the blinkers are off, and I'm like, whoa, look what's happening in education now in esports. A lot of money is being pumped into the education system from universities, secondary schools. But that's all going to be the feeder stuff in the future for every single job in esports. And then it starts to become more sustainable because there's money to be made.
Yeah, I've been saying a lot recently that I think schools and universities is where the future of esports is, because it's the easiest place to localize teams and support. And I think esports has always struggled with the sort of decentralized nature of it, where you're picking up players all across Europe, in America sometimes, and you don't really have that home. Like you formed the org in the UK, but I don't think many people are going, oh, Dignitas is that UK org. It's like that esports struggles to have that connection.
I think the good thing about esports though is global, and that's also been a massive problem for commercialization of esports, because the real world have budgets in different areas. Esports there's no borders, unless you want to make a border somewhere. So, but for Dignitas, we were a UK company, but we set out from the start to be based in Sweden, Germany, and England. That was what we were, because that was the majority of our players, and we ended up picking up sponsors from all of those countries. And then 2010, we decided to invade America. That was a conscious decision to attack the American budgets. And it worked for us, and the budgets on the American side are way bigger.
I guess it kind of works with the commercial system a bit better out there, because everything is American when it's an American org, and the viewership, English-speaking viewership in esports is quite heavily American, so they can target the American audience with their sponsors.
Yeah, but we juggled it as well. It's like, okay, we have an American League of Legends team. They're the big team out there, so our American sponsors will be happy, but we have British sponsors. We've got our British players. We've got Swedes. We have to have, we were sponsored by QPad for God knows how many years, so we had Swedish players, we had German players, but I think we have players from over 30 countries. But the cool thing for me right now is it shows you how old I'm getting, which is really quite scary. I always predicted that all of these people and players that we help are gonna go into the real world and be seeded into really cool positions of power, and they'll come back and help me. And in the last 4 weeks, I went to develop in Brighton yesterday, and I met one of my players who's now working for Bulkhead Studios, which is pretty cool. And then I was on a call earlier this month with someone at EFG, and then someone else I know that used to be one of my managers that's here and there. It's so it is working. The ecosystem is getting bigger, and there are so many more jobs compared to 10 years ago. So it will be okay in the end. I'm pretty certain of that. It's just how do we get there without too many car crashes on the way? And there will be some.
It's also with an industry that's very focused on a young audience, as in we've mostly had teenagers and young adults being involved in esports. They're going to get older. Their kids will come through and follow esports. So it does take time for the generation that you've developed to grow older. And for example, I go back to my old school and do a talk about esports and, finding a career in an unorthodox industry. And every time I ask, who knows what esports is? And every single time it feels like more people in the room put their hand up, because it's just becoming more and more known.
Yeah, it's like my daughter. She's just about to start college, and there's an esports club there. And I said to her, I'm gonna go and talk to the esports club. And my daughter's like, no, stay away. It's like,
yeah, my school's starting an esports club as well. Yeah.
But it's everywhere.
It's everywhere,
and and that's great, and that means that it will not go away. And all I would say is like I just wish people would just think about what they're doing with everything, every business decision in esports, rather than. I've seen so much like waste. It's so annoying because it took me so long with Dig to get somewhere and actually get to a point where we're actually making money. It's just very annoying when you see money burnt. It just makes me angry.
Yeah, there's been a few situations like that. You know, I'm not going to name any orgs because I don't know the exact inner workings of them, but some orgs doing stuff where you look at it and you're like, everyone's like, oh, they're the best, I love them, and they're putting loads of money into things that makes people love them. But it's very like short-term, superficial.
Yeah.
And you just look at it and you go, that's not worth the amount of money you've spent on that just to make a few people go, oh, this org's so great. And I've seen a few of those orgs either go under or have to merge or have to rebrand or have to... And you see these kind of activations that people are doing, and it's not... They're not a business. They're a brand that's got loads of money being pumped in, and they're trying to build that brand up.
And I've seen it so many times, and it keeps happening. That's what I don't understand. That happens. But there's also cycles in esports. Even if you're a successful team with a good business plan, at some point you may have the best team in the world. At some point they're going to lose. Then what do you do? How do you recover from that? How do you get replace them to get another team that's just as good? See
that with teams like Fnatic and Vitality, where they had a bit of a lull, and they're coming back up now with successful rosters.
Esports, like managing an esports team it's a roller coaster ride of like pain. It's you get to the point. Sometimes you get to the very top, you win a world championship, and then you right down and you hit the floor really hard. It's you need Kevlar skin to be a manager in esports.
It's also the time of how quickly that turns around in esports. It can be within 6 months or a year, and suddenly you're the laughing stock, even though you're a world champion 6 months or a year ago. You know, people quickly move on.
Yeah, I would say that another big change now is like at the beginning of esports, social media didn't really exist. Well, it didn't exist. The big thing back then was IRC, if anybody understands what I just said.
What's IRC?
It was basically an internet chat rooms where esports existed. You have to Google, I think it's on Wikipedia. But now social media is just like instant, so everybody's under so much more pressure. The players read and they won't stop reading bloody social media. They're like literally... If it drives me mad, 2 seconds after a game, a player will tweet something. It's like, so just walk away for 10 minutes at least. That's one rule I have. Just walk away for 10 minutes. But you can't do that to everybody. So there's so much pressure, and they read everything. Shouldn't read everything. So social media makes a big difference right nowadays for how much immense pressure there is on players. And unless you've actually been there and done it, you don't understand.
Yeah, there's a lot of chatter, and it's the constant reminder of it, isn't it? Is if you've underperformed, you can't get away from it. And sometimes people don't understand why. They don't have a clue what's happened, how much practice gone in. The amount of people who judge things like coaches, staff, you know, like you don't have a clue what they're doing, and people will call out a coach and be like, "Oh, this coach done a terrible job," and you have no idea what they've said, whether the players have completely like gone against what they've said. So people are being judged for stuff that they have no idea what's going on. Yeah,
it's the stuff you don't hear about. It's like if someone's sick and plays, like, or someone's got a headache and plays, like, or someone's had an argument with a girlfriend like just before the match, or like they didn't sleep well for the last few days. You don't know what's going on, and it's especially when you're on LAN, it's totally different to online. Online you can hide wherever you're playing from. On LAN you cannot, like, you just can't hide whatever's gone. So you need perfection in everything from like what you have for breakfast to like how you're breathing to like what you're drinking, water hopefully. To make it successful. But that's the society we live in. If it's not going right, the fans are going to criticize, which is not, I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just the ones where they go a bit too far. That's like,
yeah. I guess some advice there for players you've given, but I guess what's through your time managing players, what's one thing that people don't talk about enough that you would advise any player right now who might be listening, or a person who works in esports? What would you advise to them to make sure they do the best in their career?
I think just like listen. That's probably my biggest advice. It's like from being a like staff, just listening to like players, coaches, what's going on. Listen and understand what you're being told or what you're hearing, and even to like in game, like it's a big hookup I've got on many pro gamers. Like you can have the best comms in the world, but are you actually listening to what you're hearing? I don't know, but that's what I try and coach. Like you've got to, if you can be the best talking, but if you're not actually listening, you're in your own little world. Yeah, I would say that's probably the most important thing in esports, listening.
Yeah. I think that's a big thing everyone could learn from in whatever industry they're in, listening.
Yeah, just listening and understanding. And like, if you don't listen and you just block, or you don't realise what you're, and I don't mean listening just by your ears, just what you see, just everything, take it in and like make it better for the next time. In whatever you're doing. I think that's good advice for life, to be honest.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that's probably been the hardest thing as a coach in esports for me, is how do I communicate in a way to essentially cheat the fact that people don't listen? So you got to find a way to get around the lack of listening. Because one of the things I've always modeled with esports is, how do people get to where they are? Because like we said, typically in sports you have the grassroots academy structures where people are taught good habits. Where in esports we've almost got people through bad habits of avoiding responsibility of life, have then got enough time to game, and then they get good at gaming through avoiding school, avoiding doing the homework, or like the parents saying, oh, I need you to go to bed, and they're like, no, I want to do 2 more hours, whatever it is. So the way they've got good is through bad habits, and then suddenly they have that shift where they suddenly have to start working hard and listening. It's like people have developed the skill set to not be good students, and that's what's gotten to where they are. Again,
I think listening to yourself sometimes, that's probably good advice as well. I think like for me, like if I look at just the top level of pro gaming, like you've got to have like pretty much a violent like self assurance in your head that you can be the top pro gamer that you want to be. I think you just got to be really selfish. That's my experience of how I became like as good as I was when I used to play. But I surrounded myself with other people that were like that. And there's different versions of that selfish person. You can have the really aggressive one, or you can have the really passive, nice guy but he'll do everything he can to win. It's again, it's just understanding people. I think as you've coached, like you've got to understand the people that you're dealing with. You can't just like wash everything with the same brush all the time. You've got to. It's an individual thing. This is to get to this level in esports is really hard. But I think if anybody trying to get into like competitive esports, I think you've also got to understand how good do you think you are. Like if you think you can play Sunday League football, like okay, go play Sunday League football. But if you want to be a Premiership player, you've got to go that extra mile to like get noticed. And that's a really hard bit, and even harder now, I would say. Yeah, as more and more people are trying to do it, and also as the gap with the people who are already there increases with those trying to get in, it gets harder and harder. Yep, and but hopefully the careers will get longer over time. So. Well, I've learnt a lot just talking to you, and I'm sure there's so much more I can ask you about, but on every podcast we ask people what their top 5 games of all time are. I don't know if you knew that you were going to get asked this. No, I didn't know that. So it's always fun because you get the spontaneous sort of chaos of people trying to work out which of the games are there in their lives for whatever reason. And I try and get people to talk about it from a point of view of which have been most impactful, which have been the most important games for you. Okay. But if there's one that you particularly enjoyed and you just remember grinding a lot, that can also just sneak into. So. My number one game that's the easy one. It's about Battlefield 1942. It's the game which just got me to the level that I'd always wanted to be. And I was the best sniper in the world. I've got no qualms in saying that. I'm modest. Yeah, I was the best sniper in the world. That game just so fun. I wish it was good now, but well, you can't play anymore. It would be so hard to organise that many people. Yeah, true.
Honestly, that's something that we're missing in esports is a massive, like 10 or more people per team FPS game.
Yeah, the tactics was so hard. Like I've still got all of our tactics that we have for every single map, and there's just no. I've never managed or coached a game that's tactically harder than that. And I know people are going to say, "What did you just say?" But from a playing point of view, it was just tough because you got tanks and planes flying around and infantry. Yeah, it was great. I love that game.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's that kind of thing. And a lot of people have hypothesized FIFA, but where every player is controlled by someone, so it'd be like 11v11. But I really think shooters would warrant the 10+ person game mode the most, and Battlefield would be amazing like that. Because the feeling, I mean, my brother loves Battlefield. Whenever he described it, was that feeling you actually feel like you're part of a battle.
Yep.
Whereas when it's, the 5v5 shooter games, it does feel very individual still, where it's more like a mechanical gunfight.
Yeah, then it's movement and angles and timing, and that's the ultimate thing in pro gaming for me is when you play with someone for so long, you don't have to talk. It's telepathic. I've only ever had that experience in Battlefield with the two infantry players that I played with, because I know if this one particular player went forward, he'd look right, I'd have to keep looking straight. The one on the left would look left. We just know what was going on. So yeah, so that was definitely that game. And then second, Quake 3, CTF for sure. Fastest game I've ever played. Like if you haven't, I know Quake World's out. Well, no, not Quake World. What's it called? Quake Live now. Try it. It's not as fast as Quake 3 was, but that game was just fantastic. And that was just really proud to get into UK national team in that one.
So how FOV, sometimes people refer to Quake FOV now?
Yep.
Was it called Quake FOV in Quake, or was
no,
it
it's just FOV?
It was just the FOV.
FOV 105.
105.
Yep, that was mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so fast and like just frantic. And I watch people play it now. I wish I could still play it, but those games I don't want to play because I'll get on and I'll be crap, and then I'll get angry and break my mouse probably.
So they're so fast, aren't they?
Yeah. So then it gets harder after that. I would say Space Invaders, number 3.
Okay.
Reason being, it's just so good.
That's a fair reason.
In 1979, 1978, whenever it came out, like nothing like that existed, and I used to go to the social club on a Tuesday. That was Tuesday club I was allowed in because I was under 12. And I'd just play Space Invaders with whatever money I have or whatever money I can nick off my mum when she wasn't looking.
So you were the OG steal your mum's credit card kind of kid.
No, I lived on a council estate. We didn't have anything.
Still the money.
Yeah, but it was probably like 2 pence a game back then. I don't know. But Space Invaders was algorithms, so I learned that you had to count the beats. So if you've ever played Space Invaders, it goes din, 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 din. You have to count the beats, and I can't remember what it is, certain beat, the big spaceship goes across the top.
So you could predict it and almost like pre-fire it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, you know when it was coming. So you could, I used to, so I was DreamHack champion in 2013, 14 maybe. There was a tournament there and I played, and I said to one of our managers, like, I'm not managing, that you're in charge now. I'm going to win this tournament. So I got some music, was the same beat, and I was listening to the music, playing the game, and I won it.
That's amazing.
And I've got the tattoo as well.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
you got Digi on there as well.
Yeah, Digi and number 4, Asteroids. Asteroids was the game I used to play.
This makes the top games easy. You can just look at your arm and just find out which game it is.
But Asteroids was a really simple game. You're like basically a cursor in the middle of the screen, up, down, left, right, fire. That was it. And all these asteroids flying around you, and if you shoot a big one, it breaks into like smaller ones, and then the smaller ones were faster. And I used to use that to warm up actually.
Yeah, fair. I wonder how many people don't know what Asteroids is, because like you describe it to me like I've played it before, but I played a remake of it. But all those kind of old games like your Space Invaders, your Asteroids, your Tetrises, I wonder how many of the new generation even play them.
But these weren't computer games; these were arcade games. So you would stand there with a joystick playing them.
Yeah, my mum was talking to me about it because she had like an old school computer. We'd have to code in the games. And she found the Asteroids code and had to write it into the computer.
Right.
And apparently her brother wanted to play it, so she got asked to do it and type it all in. I don't know if you ever did that, if you ever experienced that. You obviously went to the local arcade to do it.
Yep.
But people back then would have been coding in their own games.
No, I didn't do that. I did have a ZX Spectrum, and I guess my dad was hoping that I'd start coding, but no, I started playing games straight away. And I was always like, out of all of my mates, I was the best, so nobody ever wanted to play me at games. But I was doing sport at that level, at that age, like from 9 to 29. I didn't even get into pro gaming until I was 29, so... But this makes the fifth game harder because I'd like to say Warzone purely because the last 2 years I've had so much fun playing that game. I love battle royales, and I'm proud to say that I kind of broke the game earlier this year, where I would get a helicopter and win a Warzone game without firing a shot with a helicopter by collecting a couple of petrol cans, a gas mask, and then just fly right up to the top of the map, and they didn't know I was up there. And then I'd have a gas mask, then I'd fly off into the distance, try and land at a buy station and buy another gas mask. So by the time I got the second gas mask, everybody's dead and I win the game. So yeah, then they nerfed the helicopters after that.
You're the classic, I can't shoot very good anymore, so I'm going to find a way to get around that.
No, I wouldn't say that. I won, like, I'm 51 years old, I can win Warzone normally, but I just wanted to beat the game. Yeah. I've always wanted to do that. So
yeah, find a way around it.
Yeah,
it's a bit cheeky.
There are many games, like hundreds of games I play, but I think just for... now, Warzone is the game that I play.
That's fair. I mean, I mentioned about we need a game where we got 10 plus 10 on stage or something. I guess Battle Royale's kind of filled that void of a massive war style game with like Warzone, Fortnite, PUBG, all these kind of games.
Well, it's like today we're at the Copperbox Arena watching Apex, so it's Battle Royale. And obviously Warzone, World Series of Warzone is coming to London in September. So that's going to be like all of those players. I don't think I've ever seen that many players on LAN in one arena. So that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And the reason I said at the beginning, like, I think I'll add Warzone as the fifth because League of Legends, I haven't played it for a while, but League of Legends for me over the last decade has changed a hell of a lot and created so much coolness. And like I have to shout out Riot. Riot have really projected esports forward in the last decade, like without doubt. So, and League of Legends I had a lot of fun with the Dig team, the Dig teams actually, not just one. We had a lot. And it's nice for me to see all those original League of Legends Dignitas players in really cool positions. Like they're all massive influencers now, and it's pretty cool to see that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I think I really get from you is even though you've had thousands of players and staff, is I feel like you're a proud parent to so many of them, and you still to this day look back fondly at all these players and think, I'm so happy they're doing well now.
Yeah, definitely. It's and because a lot of the players that I manage, it's like literally going through their late teens into early 20s, and now I see some of my players now having kids, and it's nice to see. So and like and for example, I've been doing this 25 years. My oldest daughter is 23, and so she's grown up with me smashing mice on walls and like shouting and screaming, and she's now in the esports industry.
That's amazing.
Working, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, top 5 games there. The honourable mention, League of Legends at the end, but I think some pretty special games there. I think for me, the fact that you've got the tattoos of them, because you haven't got many tattoos, right? You're not.
That's the only tattoo I've got.
Tattoos.
Got it when I was 41 years old in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's pretty special. But I got to ask about one last thing about Dignitas. I know we spoke a lot about the story before. I want to ask what it felt like when you sort of had to let it go, because it had been such a big part of your life, and there was that moment, where you sold it and you kind of had to hand off that control a bit. How did that all feel?
Yeah, well, there's two stages to that. So the initial, like, okay, we're gonna sell it, and I'm gonna have to stand back and watch somebody control it. But at that point, that's what I wanted. Like I got advice once. It's like from a guy that exited a few companies that he'd done, and he said that at that point when you sign and you decide to let it go, it's gone. and you've got to be happy that could be it. Like that's it. They could get rid of you the next second. So at that point, I knew what I was doing, but I had to do that at that time. I felt to go to the next level. There was a lot of investment coming in back in 2016, and the salaries had jumped up to ridiculous levels where I just couldn't cope with what I had then. So at that point, I was very happy to just, okay, where do we go? And then the end of that is when I left, when I decided, okay, I'm not doing anything, I'm bored. Get me out of here. That's that, and yeah, I'll leave it at that. I just needed to go and do what I'm good at. And that's what happened. And luckily, it only took 9 days to get a job. And it was the last 4 years have been quite fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Dignitas as a brand has survived one of the longest of any esports organization. Now we've got sort of the new Digi back, where we went through the OWL branding for a bit. I don't want to. But one of the most special moments for you was Copperbox. RLCS.
Yeah, that was nuts.
Not only was it a special event in terms of esports, but you end up being the winner there with your team. How did that event feel for you as being part of Dignitas then?
It was the combination of an excellent plan. So a few months before, we knew we had a new boss coming in, Mike Prindeville. We knew he loved Rocket League, so we looked around and was like, okay, who's the best team we can bring in? And Panda and Turbo Pulsar and K-Dot, we knew they were going to be available, and we were like, okay, we've got to get them. And he's coming in, and he likes Rocket League. He's going to like this plan, and he loved the plan, and we went for it. And they were fun to manage, like all interesting characters. Still talk to Panda now.
He's back at Dignitas now, isn't he, as well?
Yeah, exactly. So, and it just worked. They were exactly what we thought they were. You got. I think at the time it was double world champion. Whenever you've got a world champion in your team, you got something special. So all I had to do is just be given the right ingredients to go and win that title. And because it was in England, it was just amazing. And the crowd that day was just nuts.
Yeah, still to this day, I think one of the greatest esports events. I mean, I'm a bit biased with Rocket League, but Copperbox now is one of the most commonly used esports venues, and I think that event definitely has a big part to play in that.
Yeah, but from my point of view, Rocket League, whatever anybody says, I don't care what they say. Rocket League is one of the big games. It crosses so many cultural boundaries. It crosses like popular culture to gaming world. It's probably the safest esport out there, and so many people play it. And it's fun to watch. It's like it's like if you start watching a game, you can't stop. It's like you have to watch what's going on. Yeah, you have to watch the ending, unless it's your team and you're losing, and then you just smash your mouse and walk off. Been known to do that. You
smashed a lot of mice in your time.
I have. I actually smashed a mouse in the middle of a game once because I knew we'd lost. And there was 5 minutes left, and the team were like, Odee, what are you doing? I'm like, slight technical problem and a bit of wire.
Didn't have tech pauses back then.
No, not at all. So I love Rocket League. It's great.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's been a theme for Dignitas for a while. I was actually working it out the other day. I think Dignitas is one of the, especially in Europe and North America, the team that's had the most players and staff in Rocket League, I reckon. Because you've jumped from North America to Europe, back to North America.
Yep.
Whole different teams with, the generation from that K-Dot Turbo Panda all the way through to none of them left in the roster.
Yeah, well, they've kind of like gone back into America now because they're owned by the Sixers. So, it's interesting. But like with the Koi team, just before I left, I'd set them up to like be a successful team moving forward. Yeah, watch what happens at Gamers 8. If I'm right, they've got a good chance.
I'm a big fan of Cheese. I actually got to work with those guys. So Cheese, Sosa, and Zombie. Right. I worked with them for a few weeks, and Cheese is special.
Yeah, his mentality is excellent. It's what you want as a teammate. So, Gamers 8, watch what happens.
It's also, I think, with him, when you're always talking about stories in esports, you want to try and create a story out of your players, create personality out of them. The fact that Cheese is the first Switch player to go pro, right? That's a pretty cool story right there.
Yeah, and also they've got a great coach. Like Corrupted G is great. I've got a lot of time for him. So, so I hope they do very well. There's a lot of prize money to be won.
Yeah, well, I'll be watching. Hopefully, I'll be there. I don't know
Okay.
I don't know if I'm going to be working there yet.
Yeah,
We'll
you'll
find
like
out.
it there. Like
I went last year. We met last year.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
We met out there over breakfast.
Yes, I remember. God, I'm getting old. Can't remember what happened yesterday. But yeah, it's amazing. Like what they do out there is amazing. It's I wish I was going this time. It doesn't look like I am, but I'll be watching it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm gonna round it out here, Odee, because I've really appreciated the conversation I had here. I could honestly talk to you for 2-3 hours just to learn from you, hear the stories and everything like that. Hopefully we can get you back another time and find out a bit more about what you're up to now. I know you can't talk about it right now, but I'd love to hear about everything going on for you and the next steps at some point.
Yep.
But we end the podcast with the same question for all our guests,
Okay.
and that's, what does gaming mean to you?
Oh, that's a hard one. I don't know. It's just, I guess it's my life. It's I wake up, look at gaming stuff. I fall asleep looking at gaming stuff. It's like everything I do is around gaming, and then every now and then I watch Arsenal play. That's about it. That's my life.
Yeah, well, it's been an honor chatting to you about your whole journey, and like I said, I hope people who've listened have found out something about the industry they didn't know, whether it was the early history or what goes on behind the scenes. And I'm sure whatever you do next, you'll succeed in.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks
for having me on.
Thank you.